guys, we're Team Prism Beam, and we are making a glass blowing VR experience with our client, Pittsburgh Glass Center. And here's a short introduction about our team. I'm the co-producer and the UI designer, Ariel.
I'm Aldora Wang, also the co-producer and the experience designer.
I'm the lead artist, mostly 3D art and also tech art of this team.
I'm Jialu, the programmer.
I'm Christine, the programmer.
I'm Sol, I'm sound designer and researcher.
And our instructors, Shirley and Scott. So here's an introduction about our client, Valerie and Jason. They come from Pittsburgh Glass Center. Pittsburgh Glass Center is a nonprofit public access educational center at Gallery and Glass Art Studio. Here's a picture of the hot shop in the PGC building. And for you who doesn't know what hot shop is, it is the place where all the glass artists blow and actually make the glass. So that's where all the magic happens. And our clients sometimes host open event to show to the general public, including teenagers, how to make and blow glass. But not everyone have the access to the hot shop and experience glass blowing by themselves. So our goal is to replicate the glass blowing experience in the hot shop into MetaQuest Pro to create an educational and creativity VR glass blowing experience. So our client will be able to bring the VR headset into middle school and high school classroom that is in the regional area for educational purpose. And this experience will showcase the beauty of glass blowing as well provoke the appreciation of glassmaker. And we had to visit to PGC and experience glass blowing ourselves and made all those beautiful glass pieces, like the Christmas ornament I'm holding and the paperweight Laura and Christine is holding. Do you guys want to take a look? So eventually, we decided to replicate the making process of the ornament into our experience, because first, it's an intro-level glass object, but it's also fun to make because it contains the 3K elements of glass making, gathering and shaping molten glasses from the furnace, adding color to it, and also blowing into the pipe to change the shape.
During the visit to PGC, we were able to conduct some interviews, and here are some key actions, key points, and key qualities that we summarized from those interviews. The key actions are getting those molten glass from the furnace, dipping the glass into the color fritz, and also the glass blowing process. And the key point is that even though the safety training and protocols are important in reality in the hot shop, but the beauty of the making process is what we want to focus right now for the VR experience. And the key qualities are the beauty of making, which is like the making process of those ornaments is our main focus, and the beauty of fragility, like how you can be able to break and shatter those glass, is our future development. And the beauty of flexibility, for example, how does those molten glass work, how to make those glass fluid, is our challenge. Here is a simplified version of how to make an ornament. Those steps are those key steps Ariel just mentioned. For example, gather the glass, dip it into the color, reheat it, shape it, and blow it, and add a handle on top of the ornament. So during the experience, we want to take the guest to the virtual hot shop and the virtual gallery of PGC. There will also be a virtual character who leads you throughout the experience so you don't get lost. And here, I want to talk about our storyboard for our experience design. The pink parts are the more priority steps, and is what we have accomplished for Halves, and the yellow steps are what we want to achieve after Halves. In the beginning of the experience, you as a guest will enter empty and uncurated gallery space. And then the virtual character will appear to tell you to make something for the upcoming exhibition. So the character will lead you to the house shop. You will open the furnace and use a pipe to get some glass, and then you want to cool down the pipe because you don't want to burn yourself. And now you have some freedom to choose up to 2 different colors to make the ornament, and then you want to reheat the glass using the glory hole, because if you don't do that, the glass will get hard and it will be hard for you to shape the glass on the marver, which is a special desk for glass making. And then you will have the freedom to choose a mode if you want to add some pattern. Now we will be at the blowing part. The virtual character will assist you and collaborate with you, and you will do the blowing job, and the character will do everything else for you. Next, is the final part of the glass making. You want to use a bat to tap the ornament out of the pipe, and then you want to use some clear glass to add a handle on top of the ornament. And in the end of the experience, you will see your final outcome in the gallery space among some other artwork from real artists from PGC. And you can walk around a little bit and to get to know more about those artists and PGC.
And for the art direction, we're going for a rather warm palette, and there will also be a lot of glowing effect and a reflective surface just to replicate the sense of heat and warmth and the material of glass in the glass hot shop. And we have developed a material shader for the molten glass and the eventually stiff glass in general. So this material shader will be able to go from a very bright yellow or even white to orange and eventually transparent according to the different temperatures. And as Ariel and Eldora has mentioned before, the player will be able to collect 2 different colors for the ornament. So when the glass cools down, you will be able to see the 2 colors you have collected revealed on the surface of the glass. And we also have a general environment setup in the VR space already. It will be a squared room, and all the facilities you need in the hot shop will be surrounding the player. So the player wouldn't need to move a lot in this space, but they can just do different actions by turning around. And as we can see in the photo here, we have on the very left the furnace, and in the middle, the small hole is the glory hole, and on next to that is the place to put the pipe, and you can grab the pipe from there. And on the very right is the table with a different color frit on it.
So here's a demo to show what we have done so far. So now welcome to our virtual hot shop. So pick one of the lucky blowing pipe first, and you can gather some glass from the furnace. You can use pinch gesture to control the blowing pipe and gather some glass from the furnace. And you can now pick 2 colors from dipping the pipe into the color table. As you can see, due to the cooling temperature, the glass is cooling down, so we need to reheat it using the glory hole. Now you can blow the glass using the straw. In the future, we will have a plastic tube to connect the bottom of the pipe and the straw. And once the straw close to your mouth, the glass will become bigger and the color will become brighter. That is our demo. Thank you for watching.
So next, I will talk about our key iteration from tech perspective. In the very beginning of the semester, we have actually thinking of to let the player actually holding a physical pipe and seeing the virtual pipe overlapping on the physical pipe when wearing the VR headset. In this way, it will have a more like tangible feedback and more immersive experience. However, when we dive deep into the game design and experience design, we find out that the player actually need to do different things with the pipe in different stage. They need to put down pipe somewhere when they are blowing the pipe with the straw, and they also need to use the bat to take off the glass in the finish of the whole experience. And we think that it will be not that convenient and safe for people to wearing a VR headset while also holding a physical pipe when they need to put the pipe somewhere else. So in the next part of our introduction, we'll introduce everything is completely virtually of the pipe. So the first iteration we have is to grab the pipe with restrained positions and gesture. In this way, we have more control of players' behavior and it feels more stable when you are holding the pipe. But when we are playtesting with our clients, we found out that it's actually super unnatural to do that in the reality because you need to keep rotating the pipe to ensure the molten glass won't drop on the floor. So we do want to make that happen also in the virtual reality. That's why we came up with the second way to grab the pipe, which allows more flexibilities. You can grab the pipe from different positions of the pipe while also rotate your pipe with your fingers because you can use different fingers, different gestures in whatever way you want to interact with this pipe. We do have concerns that flexibilities may cause trouble, like the kids may mess up in the scene. They may not do what we want them to do because they have too much control with the pipe. So we are lucky to have the playtest last Friday with our target audience, high school students, to see what they actually react to different pipes. And we are happy to find out that they do love the convenient pipe a lot when they know how to control it. And they didn't really mess up. They totally understand what to do in the scene. And while we do have a lot more to keep developing in the future, currently we are going to go in the direction of this flexible pipe.
Next, we want to talk about our plan for future development. We want to be able to achieve a smooth and complete experience. For example, we want to get those assets text, and also we want to give them more options and steps for their creativity. And we also want to give them the opportunity to be able to fail the text to make it more interesting. And also we want to have more polished UI, UX, and sound. We also need to do the curation for the virtual gallery where we showcase those artwork from amazing artists.
And we'll also have to develop the character of the virtual assistant Blaze, who is actually the mascot of PGC. And it's a gender-neutral character who's a flickering flame, and it will be kind of like a spirit character in the virtual reality space.
And basically, Blaze will give you all the instruction to help the user work through the entire experience, and we will also have verbal as well as text instruction in case some of our user is hearing impaired people. And also, we capture some of the real ambient sound in the hot shop, and after the half, we will implement those sound assets into our experience to give the user a sense of flame. This is the sound of the forge. As the sound of going into the pipe. And at the end, we would like to say thank you to our awesome guys, Valerie and Jason, and our instructor, Shirley and Scott. And also we want to shout out to John, who initiated this project, and Anthony, who helped us to host the K-12 playtest. And also we would like to say thank you to all the people who joined our playtest. Okay, thank you guys. This is our presentation. We're open to questions.
This may be one of the most technically challenging projects I've seen in a while. You're trying to simulate an amorphous shape, you're trying to render something that needs volumetrics, and you're trying to do it on a headset. So one of the big challenges for your project then is that you need to explore what you can get done in one semester and have your clients understand what the true scope of this actually can be. So you've done that. What does your client say now that they've seen the reality of the prospects of what can be done in one semester? Are they disappointed? Are they good with it? Are they settling into the reality of what's going to be possible? Have you talked to them about this? Are
Yeah,
they here?
Our
Okay.
client is right behind you.
Well, maybe I'll just ask them. I'm just saying this could take 3 semesters worth of technical development. So your challenge is to make something that's a complete experience in 1 semester. So how are you going to put a bow on it?
Yeah, we've talked a bit about kind of where they're at and where we are still hoping that they can get to. I think we're really excited about the progress that they've made in the virtual space, and also with the kind of realization of tooling and being able to kind of mimic the physical grabbing and usage of the tools. One of the things that we've talked about with them is still trying to figure out if we can get some sense of the movement of material and what it takes to kind of continue rotation of that pipe, because it's such a key element to what we do with hot glass. So, and they've come up with some solutions, I think, that we would be happy with as kind of fallbacks, talking about kind of an animation part that could be rotating the pipe if we can't get that, incorporated into the actual user doing it. So yes, we're excited about the progress and where they're going to end up.
Yeah, my question was exactly that. Are you planning to make the glass at all reactive? Because you're doing all of these things. There's a nice step-by-step process, but that's really where the meat is, And so being able to shape, I don't know if you're planning to tackle that at all.
Yeah, in the very beginning of semester, we are thinking of, do we want to do that real-time calculation in a VR headset? It's super expensive to calculate everything in every frame. So we don't want to do that. That's the conclusion. And our potential solution will be, as Jason said, use animations to simulate that dropping of the molten glass when you rotate the pipe. So it won't be really realistic, but we will try to mimic that to some point.
Yeah, and also I think we prioritize the most important, the crucial part of glass making. So at the end of the semester, we will be able to at least have a whole experience replicate in our VR headset. So that's the reason why we end up choosing the ornament.
Yeah, so I had a very similar question, so I'll kind of rephrase it. Hard problem, so what do you think is the most compelling aspect of the experience you're designing for the guest?
I feel like in the interview with a lot of the glass blowing artists, they were mentioning definitely the physicality of it. So it would definitely be something that would try to mimic as much as possible. But also it's just like the whole process of how a molten glass will be able to transform into this transparent but also can be colored reflective ornament is just a very amazing process. So we want to capture that process as a whole to present to the users.
And also in our previous playtest, all of the playtesters says like the blowing part is the most interesting part for them, because like they will be able to see the shape changing as well as the temperature changing. And also we allow our player to, although they are not allowed to like shape the glass as they wish, but they will be allowed to choose colors. And as you blow into the pipe, you will be able to see the color gradually show up and the shape changing. And I think that's the most compelling part.
Hi everyone, welcome to the midterm presentation of the Bridging Time team. I'm Alyssa, the producer of the team, and we have Jennifer as our programmer. We have Ivy as our UI UX designer and 2D artist, and Chiwen is our UI UX researcher and also the co-producer of the team. We have Steven as our 2D and 3D artist, and Ifan is our UI UX designer and visual designer who is absent because of quarantine today. And we are working with our instructors, Mike and Scott. This is a faculty pitch project, so we don't technically have clients. So as an overview of the project, we are developing a mobile AR application that can bring the guests back to the past when the hot metal bridge was serving as an important transportation tool for the J&L steel mills. And by using AR technology, we want to achieve what is not achievable by traditional media like images and videos, to have the users immerse in the environment of the past when they walk on the bridge themselves. The experience will include 3 viewing points and also the audio during their tours. So the metrics of the project will include interactive prototyping and narration and engagement. Also, we want our models and stories to be historically accurate. And also the playtesting results matter a lot to us. Now let's welcome Chiwen to talk about our research progress.
So to start with, we did some research about the hot metal bridge. We're starting to read some history papers and blogs, and also watch some documentation and review some photographs and maps as the background research of the hot metal bridge. And we also visit the bridge to count the time spending for an average person to walk across it, and also finding some good viewing points. And by testing about the tag in AR function, mobile AR function, our team started to go to the early stage ideation of the gameplay design and also the interaction design. Based on the research, we find some key findings and insights. Firstly, the hot metal bridge can be one of the significant historical landmarks of Pittsburgh, which has a lot of archived photographs. Therefore, our team can use the photograph as one of our references of the 3D modeling so that we can ensure our historical accuracy. And secondly, during our field trip to the hot metal bridge, we noticed that the people who are walking across the bridge can be mainly categorized into 2 groups of people. First is the tourist, and the other is the resident who live nearby the bridge. Therefore, we set these 2 groups of people as our target user and analyze them by drawing some personas. Last but not least, when we are doing the tag testing, we noticed that the virtual AR model sometimes blocks users' view of the real objects. For example, on an image right here, we try to place the virtual model of a boat behind the bridge, even if the position is behind the bridge. But on your screen, you will see like it's in front of everything without being hidden by the bridge. So to solve these problems, we decided to design the whole experience as a linear story to guide the audience to some specific set that we test have fewer blocking issues instead of letting them to start the journey anywhere they want.
Okay, next I'm gonna talk about the brief user flow and our overall experience. So as mentioned before, our AR mobile app will give an experience to help bring the users back to the history of Pittsburgh. So for easier access, we will provide some QR codes around the bridge area for people to download our app. And after downloading, we will provide an instruction of where to go and how to interact with the environment. Then we will provide them with a linear story, and so that they can follow the story to go to 3 specific sites we picked around and on the bridge to look at the history of Pittsburgh via their phone. While they're walking to another site, they will listen to a narration about the history of Hot Metal Bridge and Pittsburgh overall. So this kind of narration is a more informative and immersive way than only reading small text on phone. And this also helps eliminate safety issues because people don't need to watch their phone constantly when they're walking. And then when they arrive at the site, a vintage look filter will automatically appear to bring them a feeling of the past. Besides this kind of feeling, this filter also helps blend the models more naturally into the environment. Then to interact with the model, the users need to click on a vintage-looking treasure box to release the model into the scene. We designed this clicking interaction because we don't want the users to miss any details or models in our scene. And we have gone through several iterations of this interaction, and we are continuing to develop its theme with our story. Finally, when the user finishes the whole experience, we will provide them with some rewards. We will provide them with models that they can take pictures with on site so that they can share this photo with their friends or on social media. In this way, they also help to advertise our app.
I'm going to go over the narrative structure and the art that they will be able to see from the various vantage points of our experience. Currently, we're using primarily proxies and rough drafts of all of the assets just for testing purposes as we figure out the scope of each of the sites that we're planning. We're intending to add some pre-rendered effects like smoke and smog as, in addition to the sepia tone filter to help things blend into the environment and feel more alive. The main theme of the experience is to show how across time Pittsburgh has been and continues to be a city of enterprise and innovation. We started by going to the embankment on the south side near the Three Rivers Heritage Trail. This provides a clear view of the bridge, the water, and the other side of the river, primarily looking towards the Biomedical Center from the University of Pittsburgh. At the beginning of the experience, before we allow them to interact with the models and see the past, they'll have a short, maybe 1-minute introduction going over the history of the steel industry in Pittsburgh. That way, whether they're a tourist, a resident new to the city, they'll all have the same basic historical foundation. And from there, they can see the rolling mill on the other side where the Biomedical Center is now, which is where all the trains came in to bring in the iron, as well as a barge, similar to the ones that you still see on the river today, bringing in coal from further down the river. Going towards the middle of the experience, there's about a 5-minute walk to the foot of the bridge, during which time they'll listen to a voiceover about the specifics of the J&L steel mill that was along the river, as well as why the hot metal bridge was built, what its function was, how it operated, and how it became what it is today with the transformation into the pedestrian path. As they enter the bridge, looking down the bridge itself, they'll see an animation of the train heading towards them and then turning off to their left towards where the open hearth furnaces used to be. This gives them a clear view of the whole length of the train, including the torpedo cars that were specialized for carrying the molten iron. And then towards the end, there's about a 3-minute walk or so towards the middle of the bridge where there's a couple bump outs. And they'll listen to an overview of why the steel industry slowly dissolved in Pittsburgh due to regulations around pollution and increased international competition. And from the embankment, or from the bump out, they can have an opportunity to see some of the models they saw before, but also the first look at the open hearth steel mills on the south side, where the steel was actually smelted, before having a brief wrap up, just again going over the themes of how Pittsburgh has continued to reinvent itself and can serve as an example to other cities in the world that are going through a sort of post-industrial transition.
Okay, so for our initial tag and platform, we're using Unity and AR Foundation plugins, and we are going to publish it to iOS and Android. So this is our tag demo. This is an implementation of our idea. At first, we have tutorial pages to introduce this app and the journey we offered. And then we click the start button, and this is our first viewpoint. We can look around through the AR camera and listen to the historic story. After we find a chest, we can tap to open it to see the historic barges and other buildings in the future. And then the app would guide us to the next viewing point, the hot metal bridge, and also listen to the forward story. And now we are in the second viewpoint. We can see the hot metal train coming at us. And we will have 3 viewpoints in finals. So here is an example of what the guidance looks like. Users will first use the app to arrive at the viewing spot of the hot metal bridge. And then a highlighted outline of the bridge indicates the target viewing direction on the screen. User will try to align the camera scene with the highlighted outline of the bridge. A photo reference of the viewing direction will also be shown in the top left corner. Once users think that they are in the right spot with the correct viewing direction, they can click on the check button to start the journey.
Okay, so now I will talk about the challenges and potential risks we have for the future. So first, we have difficulties on scheduling on-site playtesting because we are building a location-based application that will require the playtesters to go to the hot metal bridge physically. And also, it is a linear experience that takes about 20 minutes to finish. So to solve this problem, we will have substitute register method to have the users start the experience anywhere. And also, we might have limited time and funding for the publishment to both platforms. So as the future plans for the next half of the semester, in the next 2 weeks, we will have all the tech ready and also have the stories and narration into the experience. And then after that, we will have all the 3 scenes set up and all the models set up in the experience and get ready for the soft opening at week 13. In the meantime, we will continuously schedule on-site playtestings and also iterate our product based on the feedbacks we get. By the end of the semester, we will have the technical documentation as well as the design websites ready. So as a summary, we are developing a linear experience using the AR technology that tries to bring the users back to the era of the hot metal bridge. And also our target users will be the nearby residents and the tourists. Our goal is to develop interactive prototyping that can introduce the history of the steel industry and hot metal bridge and raise the interest and educate the users about the history. Our designs include 3 designated spots and also the voiceover during the tours. And now we are open for questions.
What's your plan for publishing to iOS?
Oh, iOS and Android.
How?
So first, for iOS, we need the developer accounts, and right now I feel like we need to, the money will be offered by ourselves. And Yeah.
So you've not talked to anyone about how to publish to iOS yet?
We kind of know, because
You know we can't publish to the CMU iOS account.
yeah, for sure.
Okay, it's going to go on someone's personal account. Who's paying for that?
Maybe we can have an account named etc breeding time, or just breeding time.
Just eat the cost. Okay.
Yeah.
So you've done a remarkable job of controlling the scope of this project from something that could have been massive to these 3 different sites. I was wondering, have you thought at all about what happens if the user starts on the other side of the bridge and goes the other direction?
So just like what we mentioned, like there's some blocking issues. So we really wanted to design the whole journey. So if they're on the other side of the bridge, we encourage them to go to the starting point to start the journey.
Okay.
The other factor with that is just we figure more, given the number of like businesses and people that live on the south side, that's going to be a more common starting point. And it helps us to keep the narrative in a more tight direction.
I have a quick question. How have the technical limitations informed your design?
We tried a few different things. Ultimately, I mean, one of the things that came down to, as we've mentioned before, is the extent to which everything is going to be placed in front of things, and particularly on the north side of the river, there are a lot of trees. And making things blend in well into the environment, that's why we decided on using the sepia tone filter, which we might have to tone back as we add other assets and continue to test things. So it's essentially all about trying to make things as accessible to the user while also not overwhelming the processing power of a mobile phone.
Yeah, I think in our initial design, there will be a barcode or, yeah.
Hello everyone, we're Team Disco and this is our Halves presentation. This is our roles. We initially have 5 designers in our group, so we split our roles into detailed version. Alexa, Constanza, Fenia, Sarah, Muru, and Penghua. Our instructor is Jessica Hammer, but unfortunately, she got COVID, so she's not able to be here today. And our client is the Center for Transformational Play. Our project is a discovery project, and our topic is peer feedback. As we all know, peer feedback is the act of exchanging feedback among non-experts. For example, we all have peer feedback experience in BVW. BVW has a lot of peer feedback sessions. One of them is that we need to fill all the peer evaluation sheets to give feedback to our teammates in each round. Peer feedback is valuable besides expert feedback. It's been proved that peer feedback system could facilitate personal and teamwork in many ways. Also, as peers are working and communicating with each other more than experts, they are likely to give personalized feedback that experts couldn't give. Sorry. Next, I will leave it to Sarah for our goal shift and challenge.
Thanks, Vanya. So during the first few weeks of our exploration, there was actually a shift in our project definition from it being a delivery project to a discovery project due to a client change. This shift actually gave us an opportunity to explore further deeply into the areas of peer feedback and maybe look for any additional areas of improvement that we found we're interested in solving for. So through reading published research papers and interviewing faculty members, we were able to turn our research insights into two main challenges. The first main challenge lived in the process of exchanging the feedback among the peers. So first, we learned that setting the feedback exchange as an outside of class activity made it less desirable for the students because it would feel like an extra work for them that they have to fit into their busy schedule. A second insight was that the students were afraid of exchanging the feedback, thinking that they might have given or received hurtful comments, or they wouldn't really know what to do with the feedback and hence not really act upon it. And lastly, the environment of the peer feedback exchange, so for instance, doing a public group feedback session versus a private one, also had an effect on the exchanging process when, for instance, a student might withhold a constructive feedback in an open session if they were an introverted or shy. And these individual yet interrelated reasonings all factored into equaling low quality in the feedback exchange system and the feedback content itself so far. And now I'll pass it over to Alexa, who will explain about the criteria of high quality feedback.
All right, thank you, Sarah. So the second challenge is like the quality of feedback. A peer feedback essay from the Center of Transformational Play bring us some aspect of what is a high quality feedback. So the first one is relevant. That means like feedback should focus on students' learning and performance, and also the copiers. It allows students to get a higher quantity of feedback rather than only one or two from their professors and instructors. The third one is diverse. Diverse peer feedback providers are more likely to offer novel perspective and uncover unique issues. The other important thing is about timely. Students should receive it soon after they submit their work or give them presentation. After receiving those feedback, students also should to reflect on those feedback. That help them become a better self-regulated learners. And according to what we discussed, the good practice of exchanging peer feedback has three main challenges. The first one, how the culture of the peer feedback system, and the quality of the peer feedback, the ability to process feedback. So based on those challenges and problems, we come out three how might we questions about the peer feedback. The first, how might we build a culture where peer feedback is fostered, welcome, and valued? The second, how might we train students to practice constructive peer feedback process? The third, how might we associate synchronized and asynchronous feedback to facilitate collaborative attention? I'll pass to Muru to talk about our idea iteration.
Thanks, Alexa. We made a feedback progress mapping to see better how the idea can aim at a certain period. The feedback process during the immersive semester is mostly conducted by peer, but we noticed that some students may consider that as another task and may be hesitant to read or write feedback. Additionally, we noticed that the in-presentation format made it provide limited time to complete the feedback form. During the project semester, the feedback system is geared towards the instructor and the client. To generate ideas, we divided into 3 groups, and each group brainstormed 10 ideas based on 3 different how might we questions. After selecting 3 to 4 ideas from each group and receiving feedback and advice from instructor, we formed into new teams and mixed ideas. This led to the final 3 ideas, which we collaboratively chose from. For the process of iterating 3 ideas from ideas, we mixed some ideas because they all tackled on the problem that students are unwilling to receive or read feedback. We also integrated various methods that incorporate the synchronized and asynchronous feedback methods. Last but not least, we merged some techniques that are aiming at enhanced student feedback quality. The criteria for selection are determined by the research, the novelty of the approach, and also the scope and the feasibility of the idea. Although we find some ideas that has research potential, we finally chose the one that is most practical. We chose the final idea because it's aligned with the scope of our next half semester, and it's most easiest to test because it can be tested through an interactive prototype. For more details, I'll hand it to my next presenter, Constanza.
So, the selected idea is the filer. What filer it is a mobile it's a mobile app. It's a platform that trains students to give and accept high-quality feedback in practice. After we selected the filer, we narrowed down our design question to be, how might we train students to give and accept high-quality feedback? With research findings and previous ideation, we break it down into 3 sub-questions. First, how could we help students to increase their tolerance to some critical but emotional evoking feedback? Second, how could we help students to identify high quality and low quality feedback? Third, and finally, how could we help students to practice giving high quality feedback using the knowledge based on the previous 2 questions? With these questions in mind, we established the core concept of filer, which is interspersed training with processing real peer feedback. We want to let students, especially college students, to use filer to give and review peer feedback after academic performance, such as presentations, test sessions, group discussions, and etc. So how does filer work? First, we know from the research paper Peer Presents that categorizing feedback is a productive way of making use of it. With this research funding, we designed the core interaction of filer to be swiping feedback card to categorizing them, act on them, and making use of them to give feedback later. Filer allows students to swipe feedback cards in 2 dimensions. First, vertical swiping the card manifests acting on the feedback. Student can either swipe up to save this feedback for later usage, or swipe down to send feedback card back to the giver. Second, horizontal swiping the card manifests identifying the feedback to be high quality or low quality. With this feature, students can identify feedback based on their rubric, such as if the feedback is specific, if this feedback is relevant, or if this feedback is critical, actionable, and etc. In this process, all the feedback card will be left anonymous before being swiped. Therefore, filer can mix some sample feedback with some real feedback to reach a state we call interspersed training. So interspersed training is a unique mechanism behind the scene. In filer, students review feedback card from the feedback pool, where filer adds some sample of feedback into real feedback. With this method, filer are able to solve 2 problems that we mentioned in previous research. First, a lot of students are not willing to look at the feedback because they are afraid of the negative or emotional evoking feedback. If we're adding this, so our solution to this is that, what if we are not making all the cards coming from the real peers? In this way, we are able to distancing the feedback to their emotion reaction. And the second problems we're trying to tackle was that learning to give a good quality feedback, it's kind of hard from a course such as collaborative U. It's really tedious and boring based on the students' feedback. So we are trying to break it down into small bits in the practice. Interspersed training allows filer to have the second core interaction, which is feedback review. After each swipe, filer would flip the card and review its real giver. As you can see on the screen, if a swipe the left card are from a real peer, which means the students think this is a low quality feedback, the filer would ask students, why would you think this is a low quality feedback? And after students give answers, filer will document those answers and save it to tips so that students will review those tips later when they're giving feedback to others, so they won't give others such feedback. If a swiped right card are from a real peer, which means students think this is a high quality feedback, filer would create a chat channel for 2 students to talk about the work and how to improve on the work. If a swiped card are from a sample feedback, which means it's a interspersed learning feedback, Filer would also deconstruct the features that makes this feedback a constructive or unconstructive feedback, which is also high quality and low quality feedback. And students can also save it to tips to use it later when they're giving feedback to others. The end goal of the Filer is to use the feedback swiping feature and review feature to actually help students to give others better feedback with learning how to give this feedback while they're accepting it. So how does Filer reach our design goal? With combining interspersed training in reviewing with easy swipe interaction, we're trying to help students to increase their tolerance to critical feedback by distancing their emotion reaction with the interaction. And we're also trying to help students to practice identifying feedback's quality based on some known example and let them see the example first. Third, we want to help students to learn how to give high quality feedback by accepting such feedback and internalize the method of making this feedback. This is the user flow of Filer. As you can see, the upper part is the high quality feedback loop, and the lower part is the low quality feedback loop. And I'll give Peng Hua to talk about our plan.
So what are we gonna do next step? First, we're gonna verify our hypothesis, and we're gonna conduct more user tests to refine our recent prototype. And third, we're gonna stay true to the high-level purpose and developing the idea into a mock-up simultaneously to the design iteration process. Here's our project timeline. So basically, we'll separate our project timeline based on each month. So in March, we're gonna finish our first prototype draft based on the user research we did before, and then we're gonna did another round of user research. And in April, we're gonna finish our draft 2 of our prototype. And at the end of April, we're gonna finish our final version prototype. And in May, we're gonna prepare for the final presentation. So in summary, we're Team Disco, and we're designing a peer feedback system called Filer. And the final deliverable would be a high interactive prototype. Now we're open for questions.
Hi, thank you. So I have, I guess, a two-part question. One is that a swipe mechanism for categorizing feedback seems really interesting, but swipe is generally associated with like quick judgments and a kind of binary response, right? Like you see somebody hot on the internet and you swipe one way or the other. So I guess I'm wondering, is there a way that people can have time to think about the feedback? Because one thing you noted in your presentation is negative feedback is sometimes difficult to accept. And so I'm wondering, is there a way that you can either think about feedback and try to process it a little bit before you decide how to categorize it? And is there a way that you could have feedback that's not just binary, this is good, this is bad, but this parts of the feedback are useful as opposed to these other parts that are less useful? Does that make sense?
Yes, this is actually a really good question. The binary problem is something that we haven't get to have a deep conversation over it because we just select this idea for processing. But that's absolutely something we could tackle with deconstructing the feedback card into smaller bits, like maybe some traits are identifying this feedback to be a high quality feedback, but some part of it is not that good. Like it might contain some sarcastic tone and things like that. We might have a more complex system, like we probably will have a score, like a confidence level of like how confident you think this is a high quality feedback, things like that. And we will later have more discussion and research on that.
Yeah, and also to add on to Constanza, the current state of the prototype, there is no timer to initiate the action of swiping, so you can take as much time as you want to read the feedback. Part of the reason why we wanted to incorporate this action was to kind of help the users practice two-step processes of understanding what kind of feedback it is, because one of the biggest issues is definitely the emotional state of the receivers, and before they even take the emotional part of it, we just want to help them understand that help them like categorize what kind of feedback it is first, and then decide for themselves what category fits into the best. So.
Do the feedback givers know their feedback is getting graded, and do they get those grades? And is that going to suppress feedback giving?
This is actually a great, so, and also adding up to the previous question, and like I'm answering both two together, we actually get this, we get the inspiration from Tinder. So there was one funny mechanism that Tinder, it's a blind match, right? So the feedback giver won't receive a notification that your feedback is getting graded, but they probably will know that your feedback was being judged. But as we manifest in the app, it's similar to Tinder's interaction that some feedback that's being saved by a feedback receiver would send a notification to the feedback giver that's saying your feedback is very, very high quality and this is very useful and we'll use it later and act on it. And in this case, they will receive the notification. In other cases, it wouldn't be send back the notification to them. Yeah.
As you kind of mentioned, the context for this, the feedback is like emotional, and it feels like getting the context right for playtesting is going to be really difficult. I'm kind of curious if you've got thoughts on how to get a scenario where people are invested in giving and receiving feedback in kind of a playtesting, user testing environment.
So our initial plan for playtesting is to find two types of scenario. First is like, as you can see, we had a timeline for ETC's feedback process. So one plan is that we probably will embed this app usage or this interactive prototype into one stage in the ETC feedback loop. And we're trying to test it in that scenario, such as the presentation that we have right now, such as the group discussion or instruction meeting that happens every week. And another plan is that Jessica has the resources in the Center of Transformational Play, and they also have like group meetings and discussions where we can test our interactive prototype.
Thank you.
Also, John, we can talk later because I saw you has a question. Thank you.
Okay, hi everyone, we are Team Vector. Our client is Vector and Bobby from Acto team, and they are here today. And our advisor is John Dessler. And this is our team, Abi, the technical artist, Jingyuan, the UI/UX designer, MK, the producer, and Ray, the 3D artist, and Yuchan, the UI/UX designer, and I'm the programmer. So Acto 1 is the device that we are developed for, and it is a footwear that enables movement in all directions and make it more easy for the user to feel more comfortable walking in the VR world. And for some key features for this boot is that it can avoid motion sickness and disorientation. It is also more intuitive to walk in the VR. It also prevents you from bumping into obstacle by pulling you back into the center. So for our project goal and also the client's need is that this experience is a demo or starter content that serve as a tutorial at the expo or a trade show environment, and is around 5 minutes. And for the development, based on the client's requirement. For hardware, we're using the Ecto boots in HTC Vive and Vive Tracker. And for software, we're using Unity and their Ecto SDK. And during the development, we also frequently work with the engineers in the Ecto team to do troubleshooting. And now I'm passed to MK to do the current stage.
Thank you. Prior to explain our current stage, I'd like to share the thought process and the considerations we've gone through. So what we have learned from the quarter feedback was, first, the guests would likely to have some expectation for the boots, especially they were more likely to have some empowered feeling or some special experience they cannot have in daily lives. And also we had to narrow down key audience more specifically and the environment our demo would be presented. And from the related works like tutorial for Oculus Quest, as well as the pre-existing demo content of ActoVR, we've learned that tutorial contents need to give very intuitive instructions with compact narrative and more of visual cues. And we had to build this experience of highlighting the features of the boots and make it remembered more enjoyable. So there were also some special considerations. First of all, considering the expo environment, we had to keep the experience length kind of compact, around 5 minutes. And secondly, the current version of boots we are working with is actually heavier than what is expected for their final product. So it seemed wiser to make sense of why the boots are kind of heavy in the narratives. And thirdly, since one of the key feature of the Ecto boots is to avoid like motion sickness, we really wanted to make sure we were not adding something that might cause possible motion sickness, something like sticking some UI visuals like into the headset or things like that. So after such considerations and the lessons, we've came to a narrative of rather sci-fi themed and doing a mission in a mechanical suit at alien planet. So, and with the 3 phases. First phase is where the guest learns about the basic tutorial, like basic operations of the boots and safety instructions, and take the first step. And the second phase is doing the simple tasks. While they are doing the simple tasks, they will learn how to walk in the boots more and more. And the final phase is the exploring the larger space. We expect the guests to be more fluent in walking in the boots at this stage and enjoy the interaction with the VR world and complete the mission. So now this is the trailer where we cover from phase 1 to 2, and phase 3 is coming soon.
Good morning, Doctor. Please activate your suit by tapping the glowing button on the controller. Please make sure your feet are on the center of the sensor, the glowing circle.
Suit activated.
Be careful not to tap it again or the suit will get deactivated. Carefully step out from the cabin. Try with slow, small steps, and make sure not to slide your feet. Scan the controller to turn the spaceship power on and see your mission.
Welcome on board.
Remember, Doctor, your mission is to collect 3 samples from the planet Vector. Click the button of your left controller to scan the sample. Good job. Now, click the right controller to collect it. Great. Everything seems ready. Now step on the teleportation pad to start your mission.
Thank you for watching, and now Yu-chan will explain about details of experience flow.
Yeah,
so thanks MK. So I'm going to introduce the experience flow of our experience. Yeah. So in the whole experience, we have 3 phases. And for the first phase, it's about the tutorial. So first of all, it's a background intro, like you guys see in the trailer. And then we have a safety instruction to make sure that the user is standing in the right position. And also the user can activate the suit. So the reason why we did this tutorial is to make sure that, teach user how to use the boots and also introduce kind of the background story. And then let's move on to the phase 2. So it's about completing the simple tasks. So first of all, the user will power up the spaceship and then receive some of the missions, like you collect something from the center console. And also, the user then walk to the teleport to transport you to the outside world, like outside of the spaceship. So the reason why we did this is to help user really get familiar with the boots, like to get familiar walking on it, and also feel like confident and get some encouragement, kind of like some reward. So then moving on to the phase 3, it's about the outside world. So in the outside world, our user can explore the whole planet, and which is really interesting, and also they complete some of the missions and receive some rewards. So in this phase, the users are able to be really proficient when walking on the boots, and also they can explore the environment that they cannot experience elsewhere. And also they receive the satisfaction and encouragement after completing all the missions. So now I'm passing on to Jingyuan to talk about the playtesting.
Thank you, Yuchan. I'm going to talk about the playtest and the iterations. First, I want to talk about our development process. We are using agile development, which means at the beginning of each week, we set our design goals. And throughout the whole week, we develop our demo. And then at the end of the week, we do playtests and interviews. After interview, we are holding a review meeting to identify our problems and brainstorm to find out the solution in VR. During our playtest sessions, we use various methods to gather feedback from players. The first method is observation. By watching players interact with the tutorial, we can assess whether our tutorial is clear enough for players to learn how to use the boots. We also measuring the time to make sure that our game is paced properly, to make sure our playtesters won't feel too fast or too slow. The second method is interview. We ask our users to talk about their understanding of the story to help us clarify our narrative. And we also interview them about our tasks and interactions so that they will give us feedback of whether our game is intuitive enough. Our third method is co-design. We co-design with our playtesters to brainstorm the themes for the outside world. And one of the key iterations we made is the button interaction. Originally, user has to use their Vive controller to physically tap on the button. But this is not very intuitive because we didn't give them any visual cues for the interaction. So we changed that to scanning the hologram controller. Now, when users walk close to the button, the hologram controller will pop up, so it can indicate there's an interaction happen. Next, I will pass on Ray to talk about more iterations.
Thank you, Jingyuan. So another iteration we worked on is the visual cue iteration. We added those glowing floor lights and also footprints to guide the users in a general direction without explicit instructions. And we are also using specific shaders and colors to denote those interactive objects, which user would also see the similar visual cue in the outside world. So by doing this, we're hoping to train the user to get familiar with those interactions and also the guiding path. And also we work on the spaceship layout iteration by doing lots of playtest and redesign of the narrative, and also based on the features of the boots, and also for the safety consideration. We also, based on the playtest, we found that different people got different walking habits and the speed of the different habits, the walking habits. So we have made lots of changes to the tasks, routes, furnishing and sizes of the spaceship, as well as the direction and angles of the user's movements. And here are some showcase of our art and UI work in progress. For the past week, we've been focusing on the really detailed and realistic spaceship modeling and texturing, and also the intuitive and harmonious UI design in the spaceship, so as just to give users a very immersive experience. And next, I'll pass it to Abby to talk about our next steps.
Thank you, Ray. So for the next step, so based on the phases that Yu-chan told you, for phase 1 and 2, we're going to be working mostly on refining those phases. So for phase 1 specifically, we're trying to add more visual cues so that we reduce our reliance on the text in the background story part. And we also want to add disconnection warning. So as if the boots get disconnected, we want to give the users a warning, a more visual alert to tell them that it's not safe to walk anymore and they'll have to wait for the boots to reconnect. And for phase 2, we are going to work on modeling the boots that the users see in the game itself and adding more mission details when the users are receiving the mission on the central console. And for phase 3, we are going to start with the development of phase 3, so art for the exterior environment, where the users can explore more freely, and add the interactions for the Vive controllers. So one of the controllers is going to be scanning the sample, and the other one you can actually collect it. And some foot trigger interactions with the environment as well. So in summary, we are Team Vector, and we are developing a starter content for the Ecto team that they can use at trade shows, and we are open to questions. Thank you.
Please tell me about the choice of art style or inspirations for art style for your spaceship control panel. Can you tell me about the intended art style or art style inspirations for your spaceship?
So for the art style, we did lots of research based on those sci-fi games or movies. And for this consoler, when I work on this, I try to focus on those details of those models, and Abby also work on the texture. We want to have this really detailed and real thing for the user, so they could feel like they are actually in a real spaceship.
And just to add to that, a lot of it was from movies like Iron Man, like the holographic UI that you see him interacting with on a daily basis.
Well, it's funny you say that. The reason I'm asking it all is because I like it, because it's not just a touch screen. It's a bunch of analog dials and like rocker switches. I haven't seen a sci-fi spaceship like that in a long time. I was wondering, I mean, you've got Holo UI stuff floating, but the actual control panel is a bunch of dials.
Yes, to add on that, we also want to have this contrast where those really detailed models are actually not interactable, and those ones with shader and lights on could actually interact. So and also for the art style, like you mentioned that it's do you mean it's not really good in this thing, or?
No, I really like it. It's just you've got really old school controls on a futuristic spaceship. That's all. I was wondering if you're attempting some sort of steampunk type thing, or what the inspiration was?
So a lot of it is like actual old spaceships, like space shuttles and things. And some of the instruments, if you look closely, the sliders in those are actually like kind of DJ instruments. So it's a mix and match of certain things.
Another art question, actually. We were shown some potential concept art that was from Marvel movies, I believe, for the planet Vector. And I'm wondering what your actual plans are. Do you have some concepts for what Vector will look like, and how do you plan to achieve them? And also, like, how much of that area are we actually going to be able to travel in? Probably not much.
Yeah, exactly. So for the external environment, we're trying to go with more of an arid environment, so that we don't have, and like kind of lifeless, so we don't have a lot of creatures to make and things like that. And it's going to be more of a rocky surface. So so that we can actually leverage the procedural tools that we have for rocks and stuff like that. And one important thing that we got from Quarters was from Jesse, who mentioned that an underwater environment in VR is really good because things can actually come towards you and you don't have to walk to everything. So for that also, we are thinking of adding an underwater field, but on a land environment. So things kind of floating around you with the rocks and stuff like that. And the concept art you saw was from Ant-Man, the latest Ant-Man. And the environment that they had for the quantum realm was pretty similar to what we wanted. So we're definitely going to be taking some cues from that.
Yeah, to add on that, we also consider about the outside environment could be like orange or reddish color to create more contrast from the blue and greenish color inside the spaceship.
Okay. Do you guys notice that people get fatigued after a while of using the boots? And do you plan to factor that into your design?
Yeah, so definitely we noticed that people do get fatigued, and also some of the previous experiences that we tried on the boots made us realize that, yeah, if you keep on walking for long distances continuously, you will get fatigued. That's why we tried to add some stopping points throughout the experience. So initially, you go to the console, you wait, and you get the mission. So we're trying to add these kind of stopping points throughout the entire experience so that they don't have to continuously walk. They can walk, stop, and like that. Thank you.
Hello everyone, we are Liubo Lab team and our instructor is Jonathan. So here's our team. So what is Liubo? Liubo is an ancient Chinese board game that's made with pieces, sticks, dice, and board. It is a strategy game that's also used for divination in ancient times. It was popular around 500 BCE to 500 CE, and the actual rules were lost. So our goal for the project is to reconstruct this game rules. We want to make it into a 3D PC game for local 2 players. And we also want to convey the history of the game using tutorials. And our targeted audience are board game lovers and people who are interested in Chinese culture.
This project has involved a lot of research. We started by reading the paper on the Haihun manuscripts, which sort of inspired this project. It describes a series of moves on the board. But we also read a number of other papers about related archaeological finds and analyses of the board and its possible meanings. From there, we moved on to historical depictions in art and mentions in literature. These really helped us learn about the possible uses of the pieces and how they interact with each other. We also looked at other potential recreations of the game, speculative recreations before ours, which helped guide us to certain mechanics, such as how to roll the sticks. But the most helpful research for the game design was into other ancient games of the same time period and region. Parcheesi stood out as a possible predecessor and influence. Yut, a game in Korea at the same time, had similar board movement. And we know that Go is the game that eventually replaced it in popularity.
Actually, we got a lot of feedback from Chorus workarounds, and here are 4 most important points. Shall we make a physical version and set more playtests with board game communities, set stretch goal early, like tutorial in digital version, and also implement some sound effects and interactive features like how players throwing the sticks in the digital version. So now let's talk about the game rules. The Liu Bo is a game which theme is about the birds catching the fish, and our goal is whoever gets 6 points first win the game, and there are several ways to get points. Bring back the fish to the nest or capture opponent's pieces. Also, the blockade features is important in our game. 2 same color pieces in one space can become a wall which block the pass, and no one can pass through it. And here are some animation that we made, for example, to show how players throw the sticks in the digital version, and player can get a random number from it to move their pieces. And this is the diagram about the capturing relationship between owl and the normal piece. And owl and the normal piece can capture each other by themselves. However, if the player wants to capture opponent's normal piece by using their normal piece, it needs 2. Same as the owls, 2 owls can capture opponent's 1 owls.
So for art, this is the art scene we currently have in Unity. Since we only have 1 artist, so we have to keep everything in scope. I want to give our audience the sense of quietness and Chinese Asian feelings while keeping all the textures and assets with historical references. This is our asset close-up. As you can see here, the assets are made of jade, wood, and lacquer. And the purpose of having all these different kinds of textures, except they're historically accurate, is also to differentiate them while they're placed on board. And these are the relics research we found for our references. They are actually from 3 different tombs. The first one, the stone board, was from the Warring State period. And the second one, the pieces, is from the Xihan period in Guangzhou. And the third one, the lacquer bowl, it's from the Han period in Haihun tomb. And we eventually combined them all together as our references.
And then I'll talk about the programming part of this project. We separate the 2D version of the board into 2 parts. One part is the code that store the game state. The other part of the code deal with the implementation of the UI and the interactions. So there are 2 major part of the 2D demo. One is take care of the movement of the pieces, and the other part is to take care of the scoring rules. So for the movement of the pieces, we use steps first search to find the possible next steps, and we also implemented the control flow of the moving pieces. And we trigger the transition of the pieces according to the change of the board, and then we also trigger the score change based on the rules we have changed. So like here are the pictures of 2 screenshots of the 2D demo, and I'll have a video that shows what we have migrated the 2D demo into the 3D part. As you can see, we firstly roll the dice, and then we choose the piece we want to move, and then move the piece, like, according to the algorithm, there are going to be like several possible locations to put the pieces, and then we'll click on the possible locations to make the move. And we migrate the 2D algorithm to 3D by like changing the clicking logic to the raycasting thing.
Now, when it comes to the game rules, we have been through quite a few iterations. As you can see on the screen, we first started with 3 different drafts, each with its own distinctive features and player goals. In one version, the player moves the pieces around the four corners along the strokes to the center, and the goal is to catch as much fish as possible at the center. In another version, the pieces move on the spaces instead of the lines around the center, and the goal is to score as many points as possible with various methods, including rolling a special die and other props. In the third version, however, the pieces move around the center on the lines and wait for good timing to go to the center, with the ability to capture each other. And the goal is to eliminate all your opponent's pieces. After rapid inner playtest, we merged all three different versions into one, based on the features that we found to be working and interesting. We then use it as our main prototype to forward with the playtesting and iteration, while we focus mostly on tweaking the details, including how the player moves the pieces, how the pieces block and capture each other, how the players score, and how they roll random numbers with the sticks. One thing we have been doing a lot of is playtesting. We have playtested with over 25 people, including main campus students at home library, ETCers, and also 7 faculty members already tried our game. Through these playtests, we have got some valuable feedback. One of the main pieces of feedback that we learned was that the movement paths were hard to learn and counterintuitive. But we also got feedback that we had a good balance between the strategy part and the randomness. And finally, we got differing opinions on the theme of bird catching fish, with some people thinking it was irrelevant and confusing, while the others thought it was interesting and it added flavors to the game. With that, I will now pass to Lachlan to introduce our future plans for the second half of the semester.
One of our biggest tasks for the second half is to implement the tutorial we have already been designing for our digital experience. Based on our playtest feedback, we know one of the biggest things we need to teach is how to move on the board. It was very clear from our playtest that the board itself is kind of intimidating. It appears very unfamiliar. So our lessons will begin on a training board. This mock-up of a training board is mechanically identical to the real thing, but it appears much more approachable. After a few lessons, we will transition players to this hybrid board, which overlays the guide elements onto the real board. And by the end of the tutorial, we think they'll be ready to play on the real thing. The lessons themselves will take the form of fictional scrolls written by a real historical Liubo player, the Marquis of Haihun. Each scroll will teach a single interactive lesson about a rule or aspect of the game, but they'll also provide a light frame story about the Marquis's life. Players will learn how he was made king of his province at age 5 and then made emperor at age 17. He was then deposed only 27 days later because he goofed off too much with the court musicians. That's the official reason. He spent the rest of his days in exile playing this game. His lessons will teach the rules, but they will also teach strategy. And we got our structure from our playtests. We learned that players who played very aggressively at first learned the game best because their first game was over in only 5 minutes, and they had a much greater appreciation of why they would use more defensive options in their next game. So we're going to emulate that structure in our tutorial. And finally, when it comes to teaching strategy, we'll present a number of problem scenarios such as this. In this example, the player playing as the dark pieces is given a board state and a predetermined role and asked to find the move that protects both of their pieces from capture. Now I'll pass it back to Eliza to talk about art for the rest of the semester.
So for our plan, the 3 most prioritizing tasks we'll be focusing on. First, to create a game UI that's themed with the art style and easy to understand. And second is the stick throwing animation, which give our audience the sense of agency and control, also with a physical feeling. And third one is the title page.
So although we don't have any sound designer in our team, but we still want to make as good sound effects as we can. So we will mainly focus on the sound of player placing the pieces on the board and use some Asian Chinese instruments that show in the image to play the background music.
And For the second half of the semester, for the programming part, we'll continue converting the 2D demo into 3D ones, and we'll also implement the tutorials. And then we'll make decisions on like how to simulate the die roll, because like that is the thing that brought up a lot of times during the playtest. And we're going to decide whether we're using animation or the real physics to simulate that one. And then we'll also implement the simulation of normal pieces transitioning into an owl.
To continue, let me share with you our future plans for playtest for the second half of the semester. First, we will continue to host weekly playtest session at Home Library. We believe we will be participating in the ETC Playtest Day, which is a good opportunity for us to reach out to a wider audience. We will also be reaching out to board game communities. We believe this is a group where we can get more insights into the game mechanics. Of course, we will continue to invite more faculty members to try out our game. And finally, we would love to invite all the previous players to return, as we would love to see how they develop different strategies as they get more experience with our game. As for the format, we will be handing out our game in a PC executable file in the second half. And we will also supply them with an online survey with Likert scale questions and other follow-up questions. And the main purpose is to polish our game mechanics and the learning curve for the players, also the ease of user interactions.
So to summarize, 6博 is an Asian Chinese board game that we try to revive, and our goal is to make the digital version of the game, and we wanted to have a realistic and Asian Chinese art style. And we already done some playtests and iterations, and we already finished the basic digital version of it. And that's it for our presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, can you talk about the potential for mastery so far? Are there really good players and players who are maybe more struggling to get it and be effective?
Sorry, did you say potential what?
For mastery of the game.
Okay, I think so far, because we only play tested, like each player only play 1 or 2 times, so they were still quite struggling with learning the rules instead of getting mastered to the game.
So what about you guys? Are you guys getting good at it?
Yeah, it's quite different on our end actually, because we kind of started developing different strategies that could kind of make the game quite weird and sometimes, but also fun in some aspects as well.
If I could, just to add a little bit, we have had a few games from playtesters that sort of really got sort of the defensive options pretty early that have gone on about 45 minutes of a lot of blocking and counterplay. But yeah, the board itself is an impediment so far to people seeing the strategy, so we're trying to get past that for most players.
Yeah, about the board. What about the board do you think is that people find intimidating? And have you noticed any trends? Certain people of X age group who play a certain type of game find it intimidating in other ways. Some people don't find it intimidating at all. Yeah.
I think the thing that stands out the most is that you move the pieces on the lines instead of on the spaces. That's not something most of our players are familiar with. They can't really see the paths on the board because of that, even though we've tried to connect them with other lines, which just sort of add clutter. And that it has sort of gone across the whole playtester group. I would say some people who play more board games specifically, and a lot of variety of board games, have adapted to it quicker than others. Yeah, but I think that's the general trend. Thank you.
Thank you.